good. We're good. Okay, we'll try this again. And I'm short. Shabbat Shalom. We will start with Hine Matov, which is on Okay. We'll start with a reading, and then I will find Hine Matov, which I did. Actually, we'll start with a reading on the bottom of page 6. May the door of this synagogue be wide enough to receive all who hunger for love, all who are lonely for friendship. May it welcome all who have cares to unburden, thanks to express, hopes to nurture. May the door of this synagogue be narrow enough to shut out pettiness and pride, envy and enmity. May its threshold be no stumbling block to young or straying feet. May it be too high to admit complacency, selfishness, and harshness. May this synagogue be, for all who enter, the doorway to a richer and more meaningful life. And now we will continue with Hine Matov, which is on page 10 at the top. Hine Matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov, shevet achim gam yachad. We will continue on page 2 with the lighting of the Shabbos candles, and Debbie Goldenberg will lead us.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kadishanu b'mitzvotav v'tivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the light of Shabbat.
Okay, we're going to take a moment, mostly because I think I need it, to welcome in Shabbat, to center ourselves here, to let go of what we have been dealing with today or in the week, and just take a couple of moments to focus on rest and recovery. Okay, we'll continue on page 24 with Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaSharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei HaMlachim HaKadosh, Baruch Hu. Bochem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech, Malachei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Borchuni l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzeidchem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Chatzi Kaddish is on the next page, 26. Yid Kadav, Yid Kadash Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma Divrach Yerutei V'al Michmachutei, B'chayechon Uv'yomechon, Uv'chai Dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, Ba'agala, Uv'izman Kariv, V'yimeru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevorach, Le'olam Olmei Almaya, Yitbarach, Yitbarach, V'yitmach, V'yitpar, V'yitramnam, V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shemei Dekudesha Berechu, Lehila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, dahamiran be'alma, v'yimeru, Amen. Please rise for the Baruch Hu on the next page. Baruch Hu et Adonai, HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach, Le'olam Va'ed. On the bottom of page 30, Blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzvaot is your name, everlasting God. You reign continually over into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening. Baruch atah Adonai, Hamariv Aravim. On the top of page 33, as you taught Torah to those whose names I bear, teach me Torah too. Its mystery beckons, yet I struggle with its truth. You meant Torah for me. Did you mean the struggle for me too? Don't let me struggle alone. Help me to understand, to be wise, to listen, to know. Lead me into the mystery. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Yisrael, Amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem, Kevod Malchuto, Leolam Vaed. Please be seated. Ve'ahavta is on page 36. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meodecha. V'hayu hadavarim ha'ela asher onachi mitzvah chayom al levavecha, v'shinantam levanecha, v'jabartabam b'shiftecha bevtecha, uvlechtecha v'derech, ushechcha uvkumecha, ukshartam leot al yadecha, vahulatotafot bein enecha, uchtavtam al mezuzot betecha uvisharecha. Lama'an tiskaru v'sitem et kol mitzvotai, uvitim kedoshim le'alechem, ani Adonai Elohechem, asher otzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, lichiot lachem Elohim, ani Adonai Elohechem. On the top of page 39, standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. On the top of 40, Yai-dai, dai, bim, bim, bam, yada-dai, dai, bim, bam, Yai-dai, dai, bim, bim, bam, yada-dai, dai, bim, bam, Yai-dai, da-dai, dai, dai, yada-dai, dai, bim, bam, Yai-dai, da-dai, dai, dai, yada-dai, dai, bim, bam, Mihi chamahucha boilim Adonai, Mihi chamahucha nedar bakodesh, Norati lot o sefela, Norati lot o sefela, Mahalechutecha ra'uvanecha, Bukeyam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam, Zeheli anu ve'amru, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Ve'enamar ki fada Adonai et Yaakov, uglo miyad chazak mimenu, Baruch atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael. On the bottom of 42, grant, O God, that we lie down in peace and raise us up our guardian to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel, for your name be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and coming to life and peace evermore. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, haparei sukat shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. We'll sing Vishamru on the top of page 44. Excuse me. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, lasot et ha-Shabbat, lidoratam berit olam. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, lasot et ha-Shabbat, lidoratam berit olam. B'nei uvein, b'nei Yisrael, oti le'olam, oti le'olam. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, lasot et ha-Shabbat, lidoratam berit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashemayim ve'et haaretz v'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat lasot et ha-Shabbat lidoratam berit olam. Uvayom hashvi shavat vayinafash shavat vayinafash shavat vayinafash v'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat lasot et ha-Shabbat lidoratam berit olam. I swear it's hotter up here than over there. Especially up there in the corner where I often sit. We will continue with the tefillah, starting on page 46, and if you are able, please rise. Adonai safetafti tafu fia gita hilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibur v'Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot V'mihod, Movi Gala Livnei V'nehem, L'man Shemo V'ahava, Melech Mosher, Osher U'Metil Magain, Baruch atah Adonai, Magain Avraham, V'ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechaye Akol atah Rav Hoshia, Morid Hatah, Melchakei Chaim B'chesed, Mechaye Hakol Berachamim Rabim, So make noflim v'rofei cholim, umatir asurim, umakayem emunato, lishenei afar, mikamocha, bal giverot, umido melach, melech memid, umachaye, umatzmiya Yeshua, ben Haman atalech eotakol, Baruch atah Adonai, mechaye hakol, atah kadoshim shenka kadosh, ukodashim b'chol yom v'lasala, Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. Please be seated. On the top of page 55, may these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day, and may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh haShabbat. We'll read on the bottom of page 57. You are with us in our prayer, our love, and our doubt, in our longing to feel your presence and do your will. You are the still, clear voice within us. Therefore, O God, when doubt troubles us, when anxiety makes us tremble, when pain clouds the mind, we look inward for the answer to our prayers. There may we find you, and there find courage, insight, and endurance. And let our worship bring us closer to one another, that all Israel and all who seek you may find new strength for your service. Baruch atah Adonai, she'orcha levarecha b'yirat navod. On the top of page 61. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country as a safeguard of peace, its advocate among the nations. May contentment reign within our borders, health and happiness within our homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship and fellowship among all the inhabitants of every land. Plant virtue in every soul, and may the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. Praised are you, Eternal One, who blesses our people with peace. Baruch atah Adonai, hamavarech et amo Yisrael, hashalom. Please take a few moments for your own silent thoughts and prayers. Oh, say shalom bimromo, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'akol Yisrael, v'imru, imru, amen. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, Shalom aleinu v'yakol Yisrael, Yahaseh shalom, Yahaseh shalom, Shalom aleinu v'yakol Yisrael. So, we are in the summer, and therefore still in the book of Numbers. I know we get to Deuteronomy while it's still summer, but I feel, as you will hear, like I do a lot of numbers. I am reading we're in the Parsha Korach, which is about yet one more rebellion. And I'm not going to read the part on the rebellion per se. But God gets really angry yet one more time and threatens to kill everyone and one more time. And Moses and Aaron go out to God one more time. So I'm going to start reading on chapter 17, verse 8, which, if you have the Plout, is on page 1006. And this is the response to Moses going out. When Moses and Aaron reached the tent of meeting, the Eternal One spoke to Moses, saying, "Remove yourselves from the community, that I may annihilate them in an instant." They fell on their faces. Then Moses said to Aaron, "Take the fire pan and put on it fire from the altar. Add incense and take it quickly to the community and make expiation for them. For wrath has gone forth from the Eternal, the plague has begun." Aaron took it as Moses had ordered and ran to the midst of the congregation, whence the plague had begun among the people. He put on the incense and made expiation for the people. He stood between the dead and the living until the plague was checked. I'm stopping there. We don't need to know numbers. So, as I alluded to, each summer here at Temple Israel, we have several lay-led services to cover for our rabbis when they are preparing for the festival, at camp, studying, or otherwise engaged in alternative work for the community. This summer, Rabbi Sobo is still on maternity leave as well. Because of that, those of us who lead services with any regularity in the summer spend a significant amount of time studying the book of Numbers and the early part of Deuteronomy. Between my 15 years in Dayton and leading services for a year and a half in Denver when we were without a rabbi, I have written a devar on every parsha in Numbers. All of that study has inspired me this year to think about the book of Numbers as a whole. So, the traditional interpretation of the book of Numbers is that the people are disobedient and stubborn, and they are constantly rebelling against God and God's chosen leadership. It starts, well, not exactly at the beginning, because that's a list of numbers, and it goes on to the end. And I would like to make a point, actually, that Numbers is what it is called in English and what it is called often amongst Christians, but in Hebrew it is Bamidbar, which means in the wilderness. And Bamidbar is essentially the point of everything I am going to say tonight. So in this week's Torah study, Moses' cousin Korach is leading a rebellion. Did anyone know that Korach was Moses' cousin? That this is yet one more part of the family fight? Lath doesn't count. I have a friend here. So I find that an interesting point. So last week, the problem was that the 12 scouts went out and 10 came back and said, yes, the land is wonderful, but there are giants there, and we are as grasshoppers in their eyes. And God got very frustrated and said, nope, you're not going. And then they tried to go, and it didn't work. And then 2 weeks before that, people were complaining about food, and Miriam and Aaron were speaking against Moses. So you can see why there is all this concern about the rebellions and the complaints. Actually, my housemate likes to call it the fine art of complaining. I think that's a good point. I'm going on a different point, however. I want to say that rather than being just a place of complaining, that this is a time of transition. If we think about what's gone on for people, they have started in Egypt, they have fled Egypt, they have fled oppression, they have immigrated, into the wilderness, where they have been at Sinai for almost a year, a little over, and now, and there are a couple of, problems again with the golden calf, and two of Aaron's sons offer, I'm going to say strange fire because that's what it is, but it's offerings that weren't asked for, and they're killed. But so I want to say it's been a difficult time, and now they are in the wilderness, and they have food that they don't know. And one can talk about manna as a God-given, wonderful thing, but to me, part of that image is it's new food. There's manna, there's quail. They eat a lot of the quail. Maybe they keep the quail too long. They get sick after the quail. And there's just more and more stress and trauma, and part of what I think of in that is that when one is in a period of transition, no one is behaving really well. It's stressful. You're angry. You're snappish. And I feel like the people and the leadership and God are all having a bit of a hard time there. It is absolutely true that the Bible internally looks at all of what happens, like the plagues and the deaths, as coming directly from God, because that is the way people in that time understood it, because they didn't really have a sense of what were viruses and bacteria and keeping food too long when you haven't had that kind of food. And so for me, looking at all of this, I really want to look at it with a sense of more mercy and kindness to what was going on for people who are really frightened in a time of transition. And I want to think about that, too, in relation to us. Transitions are hard. Whether they are positive, because it's a new marriage and it's a baby, a new house, a new job, we're excited. But we are still edgy and sometimes snappish at those closest to us. And it is all the more worse when we are dealing with things that are not desired transitions, when we have the death of a loved one, or we're recovering from trauma, or like the ancient Israelites, people who are fleeing long-established homes because of political upheaval and personal threat. In those situations, it's not surprising that there is a general sense of fear and testiness among all aspects of the leadership and between the leadership and the people as a whole. These are deeply traumatized people. I think for me this year, it's really important that I look at those biblical people that way, because in some ways, in a post-pandemic world where the social strife in the country is so intense, I think we are also a traumatized people. And the problem is, how do we talk to each other? And how do we talk to each other when it is Korach and Moses, and they're not really listening? Because in truth, the first words that come out of Korach's mouth are, who, in essence, all of the people of Israel should be holy, should be part of the leadership. His argument is good. Many people think what he really is doing is just trying to put himself in power and take Moses out, which is probably less good than, distributing the power. But the words, at least, I think, are good words. So in that imagery about, how are we in the middle of this transition? The language in the middle of the plague, when the plague begins, is that Moses sends Aaron into the midst with his fire pan to stand between the dead and the living. I just find that an incredibly evocative image, where, to think about those times and those people who are in pain, who are in suffering, who are in threat of death, who have in places of internal death, and how do we stand between that death and bring them back over to the side of life. Not bring them, but help them come back over to that place. And how do we do that in dialogue? And how do we calm the fury? Because I think that part of what's going on for them and for us is that pain and that fear leads us into a fury where we stop listening to people we don't agree with. And I promise you, I am seriously guilty of it. But I try to open up. One of the things I was thinking about with this is a show from the 1990s, and this will tell you, I'm not sure what it tells you about me, which was called, it was really for teens, it was called Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I don't know if anyone's watched that. But the premise of it was there is one girl in all the world to stand between, the world and the demons and the vampires and the evil. And what happens at the end in the apocalyptic scene that doesn't end the world, actually, is that her power is suddenly spread out to every girl in the world. And for me, that image is essentially what the rabbis were teaching in the Talmud when they said to us, we should be a kingdom of priests, that we are called to be like Aaron, standing against the plagues and those who would bring them for the sake of the oppressed and wounded, standing for healings so that we can build societies based on chesed, on acts of loving kindness. I want to read a devar that was in 10 Minutes of Torah from several years ago. It was a response. It kind of says what I said, but she said it. She did some summary on that I liked. And she references someone, but you don't need to know what that reference is. In her reading Parshat Korach, Rabbi Harris posits that though Korach's actions are often interpreted as jealous, power-seeking behavior, his behavior actually reflects feelings of helplessness and being disenfranchised. Perhaps it is a little bit of both. While Korach fancies himself a revolutionary who wants to change the priestly system, what he proposes is not anything new at all, but instead the perpetuation of an old system. Rather than create a culture of collaborative leadership, of power with instead of power over, Korach seems only to want to usurp Moses and Aaron's power and seat himself as the community's leader. But does the blame fall solely with Korach? Did Korach and his followers truly deserve to be swallowed up by the earth, as was their punishment for speaking out against Moses and Aaron? Could this fate have been avoided entirely? Indeed, though Korach's hubris contributes to his demise, Moses' leadership in this situation leaves much to be desired. As Rabbi Jonathan Sachs points out in his commentary on Parshat Korach, just 2 parshiot earlier, Moses displays a great deal of generosity of spirit towards Eldad and Medad when Joshua becomes worried about their prophesying. Moses says to Joshua, "Are you wrought up on my account? Would that all the Eternal's people were prophets, that the Eternal put the divine spirit upon them." In his encounter with Korach, on the other hand, Moses immediately falls on his face and treats Korach with skepticism and contempt. Some commentators suggest that this is because Moses reads through Korach's words and realizes that he is really only motivated by a desire to increase his personal power. Ultimately, regardless of Moses' reasons for treating Korach so harshly, he misses an opportunity to speak with Korach and try to understand his desire for power, which well may have resulted from feelings of helplessness and disenfranchisement. Had he taken those concerns seriously, Moses could have ushered in a new era of collaborative leadership. by exerting his power over Korach, by testing him and ignoring his concerns, death and destruction follow. Certainly in our own day, we are seeing the destructive consequences of not taking seriously the concerns of those who feel disenfranchised. By ignoring their interests and demands, regardless of whether we find them legitimate or even if we find them offensive, we perpetuate a system in which one group has power over another. Nothing can be accomplished because of increasing alienation and divisiveness. Rather than falling on our faces or turning our faces away entirely, we have an opportunity to listen and call them into a process of mutual understanding and creative problem solving. Perhaps if we all listen more and assume less, we will find our shared divinity and harness our collective power to create the world we want to live in. May we all find our inner errands with the courage to bring the presence of a compassionate God into a world filled with many forms of plague threatening our common humanity. Amen. You know, it's really nice when there are two people up here, and like the other person can take over while you sort through your papers again. Make sure I find the Misha Barak list. Okay. We will, as the Torah is in our midst, we will be saying a Misha Barak. I will list people momentarily, but we are on page 253. This week, as we are praying for those who are in need of physical, spiritual, emotional healing, we think of Isaac Stoller, Casmira Cairo, Jeremy Watts, Tiffany Lobertini, Mariah Strickland, Grace Gressley, Eileen Eady, David Woods, Charles Fay, Kim Howell, Julie Wagner, Eleanor Must, Ann Burke, Catherine Cooper, Sid Gross, Cicely Nathan, Jim Locke, Gary Pacernick, Bob Kahn, Steve Samuels, Arlene Rasnick. Is there anyone else for whom we are saying a Misha Barak tonight? We will sing together in the middle of page 253. Misha Berach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Limotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishe Berach Imotenu Mekor HaBracha Levotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. We will continue with the Aleinu on page 282, and please rise if you are able. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, la'tet gudula le'otzer breshit, shalom kelkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu kekol hamonim. Shalom sam kelkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu kekol hamonim. V'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu v'nehemar haya Adonai lamelech el kol haaretz bayom hahu Bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo 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 echad. Please be seated. We will read before Mourner's Kaddish on page 288. When I die, give what's left of me away to children and old men that wait to die. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not in your mind. You can love me best by letting hands touch hands and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die, people do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. So people know ahead of time that Mourner's Kaddish is on page 294. This week we are in a period of Aninut for Melvin Kaplan. We are in a period of Shiva for Judith Russlander and a period of Shloshim for Natalie Bar. And we are remembering the yahrzeits of Maury Summer, Julie Lester Levinson, Julius Littman, Frida Hurwitz, Betty Raphael, Gerald A. Green, Frederick Wolf, Robert Barr, Samuel Rosenthal, Max G. Margolis, Hannah Baum, Mary Shaman, Magnus J. Margolis, Judith Goldenberg, Lincoln White, Dr. Lewis Barnett, Liam Davidson Gates, Jacob Stoller, Dr. Joseph Resnick, Dr. Alice Ullman, Peter Albert, Esther Elaine Neiman, Ada Levinson Perlson, Jack Leet, Stanley Frank, Gail R. Ruda, Mark Launer, Abraham Goodman, Mose N. Jacobs, Eva Bremer, Jenny Evans, Ruth Goldstein, Bertha Bruckfeld, Arthur Emhoff, Jacob Friesman, Ruth C. Bergman, Jack Moss, Janice Eisenberger Glaubinger. Is there anyone else for whom we are saying Mourner's Kaddish or whose name needs to be repronounced? Will those who are in mourning and remembering please rise first? And the rest of us, please join them as we say Mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei rabbah, be'alma divrach yerutei v'yalmech malchutei, b'chayei uvyumei uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agal v'zman kariv v'meru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mavarach le'alam almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitroman v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yithaleh v'yithalal shmei dekudashah berechu. Leilal min birchata v'shirata. Tushbekata v'nechemata. Damiran be'alma v'meru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shmaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'meru amen. Osei shalom bimromav, hu ya'asei shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'meru amen. May all of their memories always be for a blessing. And let us all say, amen. Please be seated. I know I handed out another song, and Courtney sings it sometimes, but I think I have pushed my voice to the end of what I easily give with music. So I'm going with Ein Keloheinu because more people in the room know it. So sing loud. We are on page 322. Ein Keloheinu, Ein Kadaneinu, Ein Kelmalkeinu, Ein Barshienu, Mi Eloheinu, Mi Kadaneinu, Mi Kelmalkeinu, Mi Kamoshienu, No Del Eloheinu, No Del Adonenu, No Del El Malkeinu, No Del Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu. Shabbat Shalom. We have a lovely Kiddush food in the hallway and motzi, and please join us. Thank you.